Dabu 7 with an earthquake update. As you can see here on Global Incident Map, we've had a 6.5 striking down here on the Arctic Ridge. Going to start off here at the Global Incident Map. We're going to shift over to USGS, and I'm going to show you some of the features here on the ocean floor, these ridge lines and also these plate lines, and you're going to see that a lot of this activity pops up in specific places. So when we start to see areas that have quakes in them that don't have fault lines or any plate boundaries, we have to start looking at other causes for these quakes. Now, I point that out because that one there is in an odd position that didn't do a lot of damage, but we have seen some significant quakes here recently with the 6.5 striking down here. They've got a 4.9 and a 4.1. What they do not have is the Taiwan quake. Oddly enough, why they do not have this on here, I'm not sure. But let's go over here. 6.1, very shallow today, has struck in this region. There's video of people inside the airport and everything rocking back and forth. Now, when we look around here, I want you to notice, you can see that all this activity primarily happens along these fault lines or these plate boundaries. You can see all the way down and around through Tonga, the same thing. You can see them hitting on these lines all the way through and through. And you can see New Zealand's issue here is that this major fracture cuts right between these two island regions. And this is why Christchurch gets those popping earthquakes that can shift the earth up out of the ocean like we've seen in the past. Now, look here. We have another decent quake. This one, this is that 6.5 that we were just looking at on this other map. From here, this was listed as a very shallow quake, but you can see that it hit on this line. So hitting on that line tells me it's a common type of quake. We didn't see any major tsunami information come out of there. Once again, as we move across the ocean, where's the next quake? It is on one of these lines. And look up here in Africa. See what I'm saying about odd, not having no plate boundaries, no nothing? Yet look at this one. It's right there on another line moving through the region. Let's move over this way. Same thing in the Atlantic. And I talk about the Mid-Atlantic Ridge all the time. It has the quakes hitting on it all the way down to the Serpent Heads. This is the area we normally start to see the Georgia Islands, South Sandwich Islands. We start to see the quakes hitting down in this region. And when the big ones release, afterwards we start to see more activity walking straight up that line. And that's exactly what we see. Here, again, where does the quake hit? The quake is hitting on the line every single time. It's not happening here, 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 or here. It is always on that line for the most part. When we're looking at the natural type of quakes now, let's shift over here to the United States where you can throw that whole theory out the window because per what the USGS is showing us, there is nothing running down through this region in terms of major fault lines or plate boundaries. Once again, you can look here and you can see the same action. All on those boundary areas. Even here where this comes in right in off the coast of Venezuela, which is where we saw a quake not too long ago. But you can see in this area they start to shift inland. Now, maybe there definitely are some faults that run through this region. We know the New Madrid fault, and there's a bunch of other faults. They're just not showing them here on the mainland, which I wish they did. They're showing them in the ocean and on the ocean floor, but they stop when it goes into the land. You'll notice we have a pattern that has been picking up here, and what they don't have. Let me go back just a little bit further. They don't have the big quake that just struck there. Off the coast, there we go. 3.0 struck off the coast of New York. Wanted to pull that up so people could see that that did strike there. Now going back, you can see the ones in Jersey. This was in North Carolina. And I changed it back there. Now look at this. Look around the New Madrid. This walks right up to what I call the keyhole of the New Madrid. This is the area they call land between the lakes. Down in Kentucky, it's a very, very unique area. And it's very close to Mammoth Cave, which is the deepest cave system on the planet. And here you have the town of New Madrid that sits right here. And this is the keyhole, so to speak, of what I call it. It's very interesting because this cuts right here down into Tennessee. This is Missouri. This is Illinois. But this is still Kentucky. Even though Kentucky should have ended right here and it cuts it off and all this below is Tennessee, they keep this little land island, Kentucky, all the way down into the New Madrid. And this is the area that is overdue and can generate a massive quake anywhere along the lines of this fault. You talk about an overdue quake. Well, we've got them on the West Coast. We've got them on different fault lines. There's a look at the New Madrid up close. Some of the swarming going on there. And if you're not paying attention, you're not seeing this on a daily basis. If you're not paying attention to the small quakes, you're going to miss this type of swarming activity. And up here around Yellowstone, we've had an increase of activity as well in terms of the smaller quake activity. And still, these maps do no justice in terms of what's really happening up here. At Yellowstone, there is a site that tracks all of the quake activity, and they have it on a graph where the slightest little movement is going to be registered, and you can see it. And even if there's one-pointers that hit there sometimes, for whatever reason, they don't find their way onto the USGS map or the global incident. And I find that odd. You always just see one or two just sitting there. And then that's it. Just showing you that, yeah, something's happening there, but it's never showing the magnitude of it. How many? But no major quakes. West Coast definitely overdue for the big one. We talk about the San Andreas all the time. The Cascadia is something I think we should all pay attention to. The Juan de Fuca, this whole area, this whole plate region right here. That lack of activity. This area likes to generate some decent quakes between 5 and 7. You know, a big one could definitely send a tsunami into the coastline. And I've talked about over and over and over again, Seattle, and the devastation that this city faces when the next big quake and tsunami hits the region. It will be the city that literally will become no more. It is built on landfill, unlike any other city in the United States to that magnitude. Big time. And it's earthquake proofed. And they say that when the quake hits, all the glass is going to pop out of all these buildings that are earthquake proof. And there's going to be like 3 feet of glass in the roads below. Plus, the ground itself in Seattle is expected, with the big enough quake, one that can and they're expecting will strike the Pacific Northwest. It will liquefy the ground below Seattle. This is from the USGS and the scientists and everyone else that are saying that this place is in bad shape come a big event. They've said it over and over and over again. It just hasn't happened. I mean, I don't know what else to tell people when you've got different agencies screaming to the top of their lungs that this is the one city that literally could sink given the right circumstances here. Just because of how it's built, what it's built on, the vibration would liquefy the ground. Cities would just sink right into the ground. Or all the smaller towns and the outlying cities outside of Seattle. And the main city itself would go down into the ground. Into the water. It would be something like out of the movies. How they depict it in San Andreas, all the earth crumbling and all the water rushing in. Well, Seattle's actually the place that could really happen big time. And that's not theory or conjecture. That is what they are warning is going to happen. Not a if, but when is what they say when it comes to that. So, in terms of the United States, well, this area, definitely key. Always watching Yellowstone, Cali. I mean, look at all the swarming. It's expanded into Utah down here. Expanded further into over here. That is a release of energy, though. So, as long as that's happening, it's kind of stopping a big one from building up. When things go quiet, that is when energy starts to build. That is when it can release a big one. And it's been a while since we've seen one down here in the Baja area of this region, as well as above the Juan de Fuca, all the way up through here, British Columbia. This area can generate some big quakes. And this is a very unique area if you do not know the history, and I was surprised to find this out. I went to a site that was showing the Earth as Pangea, all connected, and it shows it breaking apart and then all the way up till modern day. And of course, we can debate how accurate it is, but what I found interesting is this whole region here was one huge, massive island out in the Pacific, over where Hawaii is right now. One huge, massive island that was like L-shaped, and it drifted all the way up into this area and smashed into this region, and that's what formed this whole mountain chain all through here. So everything west of that mountain chain is not part of this Canadian continental shelf up here. It's not native to it, so to speak, and you can see it. It runs all the way down here into the edge of America. In this area, it may be including all of this up here. The Seattle area, I have to look closer, but I do know for sure this region is a part of it. All of this. So it's a different land that connected with this continent here. That's interesting to note. Knowing it didn't make its journey along with all the other landmass. Came from a whole different direction. Could have had whole different types of life and history on it. And I think that that's important to know. So, some updated info there, guys, in terms of earthquake activity here globally, worldwide, with the biggest being the 6.5, and then the one that just hit in Taiwan, which I cannot believe they don't have this listed. Should be right there. Should be right here. It's not. We've got one off the coastline, but there you guys have it. An update on the global activity. I will continue to update as we see more info. As I always say, if you live in an earthquake-prone region, make sure that you have a plan. And until next time, this has been Dabu7 with an earthquake update. Much love, y'all.